I'm Martha Sadowski, and I'm on the board of the Friends of Pope Farm Conservancy. And I'd like to welcome you to our second spring virtual program. Today's topic is Forward Garden at Pope Farm Homestead. And our speaker, Matt Lechmaier, who is the farm manager, is going to talk about plans for 2021. The garden started last year. It's one of 10 gardens of the Madison area food pantry garden organization. And they were very successful last year. So he'll talk a little bit about their success last year, but mainly talk about what's planned for 2021. We have one more spring Zoom program coming up, and that's April 20th. And we're going to be talking about attracting bluebirds to your yard. So if you're interested in bluebirds, make sure that you tune in to that program. And if you want to register for that program, just go to the Friends of Pope Farm website, and there's a link there where you can register. We are recording today's program, so you can look at it again. Or if you know of someone who wasn't able to attend now, they can review the program later. A little bit about the Conservancy before we get into the program. It's 105 acres of land located in the town of Middleton on Old Sauk Road. It's been a conservancy for over 10 years now. I think it was deemed a conservancy in the year 2000, so actually over 20 years. And the Friends Group is a nonprofit organization that partners with the town of Middleton to preserve the land and to create educational opportunities at the Conservancy. All of our programs are free and open to the public. The Conservancy itself is open every day of the year from sunrise to sunset. Forward Garden is adjacent to the Conservancy. It's just west if you're on Old Sauk Road looking to the west. And it is the Pope Farm Homestead that has now become Forward Garden. And we're really excited about the addition of Forward Garden to the area. The Friends of Pope Farm Conservancy, as I mentioned, is an organization that offers programs and activities. And if you're interested in joining, becoming a member of the Friends, all you have to do is go to the website, fill out a form, send us your membership fee. And as a member of the Friends, you get a monthly update with all of the activities going on at the Conservancy and also at Forward Garden. And then you also get copies of our news magazine that comes out throughout the year. So back to today's program. As I mentioned, Forward Garden started in the year 2020. The Dane County, the Madison area food pantry gardens hired Matt as the farm manager in 2020, and he had a great year. He worked with many, many volunteers, and I believe they harvested over 25,000 pounds of good fresh produce that went to food pantries and other emergency food programs. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Matt, but before I do that, a little bit about our Zoom format for today. We'd like everyone to mute yourselves during the program. If you have a question or a comment, use the chat box, and we will take care of questions either during the program or at the end of the program. And then, let's see, I guess that is it. So a little bit about Matt. Matt Lechmaier started work as the farm manager at Forward Gardens last year. And prior to that, he was in California and he ran a small organic mixed vegetable farm near Davis, California. And that farm provided vegetable boxes for 26 families every season. He also managed an environmental education program at the Center for Land-Based Learning, and that program brought high school students to farms and ranches throughout the Sacramento Valley. And the students worked to restore native habitat, pollinators, and other wildlife. Matt is a graduate of Madison Memorial High School. He also has a Master's of Science degree from the Wildlife Ecology program at the University of Wisconsin. He has a background in agriculture, and his very first experience was digging potatoes with his grandfather as a kid. But since then, he's definitely branched out. His growing season in Wisconsin last year, as I mentioned, was very successful. And they grew 31 different crops and produced 25,000 pounds of fresh produce. Now, with his wife and two young kids, Hazel and Oliver, Matt is enjoying his return to Wisconsin and spending time at the Pope Farm Homestead. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Matt. He has a series of slides that he'll use for his presentation, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Martha. Is my screen currently being shared? I think it is, right?
Yes.
You can all see the beautiful photo of the Pope Farm Homestead there from the very old rock wall, which we could add to every season if we wanted to. We're actually digging up rocks as we speak that got surfaced from the spring thaw this year. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak with you. This is our second gathering between myself and Friends of Pope Farm Conservancy. The first one was actually a tour in person, limited to 25 people last summer. And if that opportunity arises in the future, I'd be very happy to play that role again. I'd much rather see you all face to face and talk to you and answer questions as they come up. This is a little more formal than my comfort level, but we'll get through it. And if you ever have questions along the way, there's a chat box. You can type it in, and someone will help me stop and pause and answer questions as they arise as we go through this, so that you can get your questions answered. So we'll jump right into it. Two things I'll say before I really get started, one of which is I love my job and I really like where I work, and it's just a wonderful place to spend a day. The farm itself, but also the adjacency to the Conservancy, which is just a great resource for the community. I can't really imagine a better place to spend my work days in the summertime. So Forward Garden, the Pope Farm Homestead, a generational opportunity rooted in community collaboration. Many of the slides that you see, I borrowed from one of our board members, Brian Arndt, who has spoken to many different groups about what we are doing and what we are trying to accomplish as an organization. So thanks to Brian for putting many of these slides together. What my plan is to just go over an overview of the organization that I represent, the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens, which I abbreviate here, MAFPG. So we'll go through what that model is, where our gardens are located, general yields each year, and where the food goes, and who we work with to accomplish our mission. And then I'll get more into Forward Garden specifically, since that's what everyone seems to be most interested in today. So our model is, our motto or our slogan is we plant, we grow, we feed. So we have 10 garden locations. There's a map right here to show you where they're located. They've moved around over the years. We've been in existence for 21 years now as an organization. It was started by Emmett Schulte and Ken Whitty in the year 2000. And they actually, it started as a food recovery program more than anything. So they went to the market downtown at the end of the farmers market on the square, and they gathered up leftovers from different vendors and they brought it to the food pantries. So it was mainly food recovery, and they branched out to other farms doing the same thing, just gleaning things from fields that would otherwise not go into circulation, either in the emergency food system or anywhere else. So from there, they ended up starting their own 3 1-acre parcels, some on the east side, some on the south side. And then the location of different gardens has changed over time. We rent some of the acreage that we use, including the Pope Farm Homestead. We also rent acreage at the Schulte Garden, which is where 3 gardens are located. It's a large star on the left center. Schulte, Whitty, and Hirschberger gardens are all at one property. We built a shed there to house a lot of our implements and our tractors over the winter. We've abandoned our east side locations because it's been so difficult for volunteers to reach those locations at the end of a workday using the Beltline. So it just became unsustainable to rely on volunteers to manage a garden they couldn't really access readily. So all of our gardens now are on the west side of Madison or in Middleton, and there's one in Fitchburg on Wayland Road, just past Lacey, off Fish Hatchery. All of our gardens have different relationships and different ways that they put their produce into the emergency food system, and I'll talk more about that. Many of our gardens have specific relationships with one pantry, and Forward Garden's a bit unique in that sense because it's much larger scale than our other gardens are. And so we serve many different outlets. So each garden has a garden leader and a volunteer coordinator that work together to make sure all the crops grown at that site are attended to and harvested in a timely way and distributed. A lot of our produce is brought to the pantries within hours of harvest. The one exception, we actually built a walk-in cooler last summer at the Forward Garden so that we could take the field heat out of many of the crops that we were harvesting and keep them for a day or two before distributing them, which increased their shelf life and kept a really high standard of quality. And I should also mention now, and probably again, that our mission is, as an organization, the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens mission is to supply fresh, nutritious, first choice and culturally relevant produce to the local emergency food system, mainly food pantries, but there's other programs that we also support. So the cultural relevancy is a big part of what we're doing at Forward Garden, and I'll talk more about that very soon. Integral to all of our endeavors at all of our gardens are the volunteers. And until I was hired just about a year ago, we had never had an employee. So we've been a nonprofit run strictly by volunteers, and that is how most of the gardens are run. They are just the front and center and lifeblood of all of our gardens, and we accomplish what we do with help from about 700 community members each year. So if that's 700 times 21 years, it's about 10,000 individuals. We average about 6,000 hours of volunteering each year, and those members come from high schools who have, community service requirements for graduation, or churches. There's businesses, some of which actually support their staff to get involved in community efforts like these. Examples of those are like Exact Sciences, Zendesk, Promega, Cummins and Stoughton. There's Meat and Hunt is another one we're going to see at Forward Garden this year. So many businesses are great in terms of their support of employees' efforts to get involved in their communities. All ages and ability levels are welcome, and that's something that we really try to strive for at all of our garden sites. So if you're 2 years old and have just learned how to walk, you can still come out with your family and have a safe environment to kind of interact with other individuals and see what a vegetable looks like up close. We have all age and ability ranges represented at all of our garden sites, and so families are very welcome to come out, and that's something I'd like for you all to keep in mind if you think about joining us. Our yields. So all of the produce that we provide or that grow and glean at different garden sites are donated. We average between 80 and 100,000 pounds each year from our 10 garden sites collectively. So if you do that math real quick, it ends up being about 2 million pounds that we've been able to provide to the emergency food system in Dane County since 2000. In 2020, we were able to grow just over 60,000 pounds of produce in our 10 garden sites, and we gleaned an additional 21,665 pounds. And the gleaning, again, is from other gardens that we don't manage directly, but that have excess produce available, and Dan John with the Middleton Pantry, and he has like a subset of volunteers through Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens that he organizes on a weekly basis during harvest season to go to where the food is available, and then we'll pick up gaylords full of potatoes or broccoli or cabbage or peppers or whatever it ends up being. We take it to whatever pantries or food banks can use a gaylord full of any one product. It's a lot of food. Second Harvest and Community Action Coalition are the two food banks in Madison, and both of them oftentimes get gaylords full of the produce from our gleaning efforts. So here's a bigger picture of what the local food system looks like and where we fit into it. So it almost looks like the clear summer night sky with constellations of different entities working to varying levels, collaborating to meet the same goals. So in this circle here, you can pull it out on the left side. That's sort of a enhanced view of what that constellation that we're involved with looks like. So Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens is there. And we serve many of the other outlets that you see within that same constellation. It is complicated, and there is a lot of overlap in different missions, and we're working really hard. Our board and myself are trying to develop collaborations and cooperation with groups doing similar work so we can increase efficiency and synergize our efforts so that we can have a greater impact collectively. I'll talk a little more about those efforts too soon. And this is where our produce went in 2020. It also includes a couple of names that are new to our outlets that we'll be serving. So we started harvesting in early June last year in 2020. So that was about 6 weeks after we started planting and 2 weeks after I started my job. Middleton Outreach Ministry Pantry and Badger Prairie Needs Network were the two outlets that received the initial produce because they were very local and accessible to me with the pickup truck I had available. And they also were really responsive to my inquiries about whether they could use what we're growing. And from there, we branched out and we ended up establishing good relationships with about 19 different outlets last year. These logos that I included in this slide, there's 4 of them. Bethel Lutheran Church is just off of the square. They've been great. They'll come up a couple of times in this presentation, but they're a new outlet for us. They're one of 3 churches that actually work closely together just off the square to make sure there's food available for anybody in the downtown area every day of the week. So each of them have 2 to 3 days that they open up their food pantry at their church for people to stop by and get a grocery bag full of produce. Cook It Forward, you may have heard of before. It was started during the pandemic by chefs in the Madison area that wanted to keep their staff employed, and they wanted to support families that were experiencing food insecurity. So these restaurants work together to create chef quality meals and then work with last mile transportation logistics through collaboration for good to get the food exactly where it's needed to the doorsteps of families in need. So we'll be bringing some of our produce to them to reduce the cost of each meal that they provide to families that can't afford it. Heights Unlimited, I just had a conversation last week with them. They're in Black Earth. They have some access to fresh produce during the growing season locally, but it's very limited, and they serve about 35 families each day that they're open, or each week. And so they could use more, and they're willing to help me get it there. So I think that'll be a really easy new outlet to serve in 2021. And Little John's, I'll talk a little more about later as well. That's a nonprofit run by Jennifer Zisser and chef Dave Hyde, who owns Liliana's restaurant. He's got a really unique model where he serves families that come in for meals, and people pay what they're able to for that meal. So it's not a set price, and it's been working for him, and he really is passionate about making sure people have access to food with dignity, and have restaurant quality meals regardless of their means. I won't go through this entire list, but it does represent who we were able to serve last year. Okay, so this is directly from Dr. Brian Arndt's presentation that he's given a couple of times with me as an audience member. It's from the CDC, and that's where he borrowed this logo from, but it shows the what of what we're doing, and that's like what affects health. And then there's also the where, so where the vulnerable populations are that we are trying to serve. And the collaboration with others is the who, and then the how is how to implement initiatives for the greatest impact. And so that's sort of like the broader scope of how we perceive what we're trying to accomplish. And we're trying to be pretty intentional about who we partner with so that we can reach the populations at greatest impact and greatest vulnerability and greatest need. So this is from the City of Madison website. It's a food access improvement area. So the orange areas are areas in our immediate vicinity that don't have great access to fresh produce and to food in general. Forward Garden is just west of the map, and just off Old Sauk Road, and you can see Pleasant View Road on there. So we're just about a mile and a half west of that. And we're trying to find pantries and other outlets that we can support with our fresh produce from Forward Garden that can serve those populations in the orange areas. Examples from the previous list I showed you would include the River Food Pantry and the Lucier Community Education Center, which is on Gammon Road, really close to Mineral Point. And a lot of the families that they serve right by Jefferson Middle School are in the zones 9, 10, and 5 there off Raymond Road. All right, so it takes a small army of organizations and individuals to accomplish the mission that we're striving for each year. This is not a comprehensive list. It would get even more overwhelming if we tried to show you everybody that we've gotten support from and help from. But this just underlines the fact that it takes a lot of hands to accomplish food security in a community. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little closer and just talk more about Forward Garden with the time we have remaining. And I think everybody on this call should probably know exactly where Forward Garden is located. It's at the Pope Farm Homestead, which is adjacent to the Conservancy. 7492 Old Sauk Road is the address, and I think it's a Verona mailing address in the town of Middleton. It's a prime spot for many reasons. It has great Class 1 ag soils. It's adjacent to Pope Farm Elementary School, which started having in-person classes in February of this year. K through 4 students are there, and it provides us with a great opportunity to engage youth in growing food and learning about nutrition and food insecurity in our community. It's also really close to the West Madison Agricultural Research Station, and it might also be adjacent to a middle school if they decide to build a middle school just south of the elementary school that currently exists. So a great place, good visibility, really productive soils next to many communities and neighborhoods where many of our volunteers live, and pretty close to the outlets that need the produce as well. So 2020, as Martha mentioned, was a good year, a really good year for the Madison area food pantry gardens in terms of overcoming the challenges related to the pandemic and being able to serve many of the outlets and even more outlets than they were initially able to in years past. I came on board May of 2020 with several crops already in the ground. On day 2, we planted a couple thousand pepper plants on May 16th last year, and that's a big date on my mind now because we're watering the greenhouse twice a day, and it's getting pretty full with transplants, and those are going to need a home and within about a month or so. So mark your calendars for mid-May for some planting if you're interested. Pope Farm Homestead itself is a 15-acre property with 3 acres of buildings kind of centered around a horseshoe of 12 tillable acres. We started our operation, although we lease all 12 tillable acres, we started only with a 5-acre eastern facing field straight across from the water tower that you all might be familiar with. So we work with the county to establish 27 plots, which the square footage footprint is 2.44 acres to be exact. We left buffer strips in between them so that we could reduce erosion, and we kept the winter wheat that Bill Hendricks had planted the prior fall to make sure we didn't have denuded, bare soil throughout the growing season. Because there is a slope there, and we would have lost a lot of topsoil if we had left it not vegetated. If you've seen it recently or seen me the past week, I was out there Easter weekend reseeding those buffer strips with barley, which is donated. And so it'll be reinforced this year, and we should have even less runoff and erosion than we experienced last year, which was also minimal. In those 27 plots we had last year, there's a few numbers floating out there. We had a board meeting in October last year, and I summarized the numbers I had on hand, and it ended up being 23,000 pounds plus. But we weren't done. We went through mid-November because we had fairly mild weather the first 2 weeks of November. And so total poundage donated was just under 24,000 pounds with about 2 truckloads full of sweet corn that didn't quite reach maturity. And so that went to a local chicken farmer who's going to turn around and give us a flock of chickens here in about a week. The produce was varied. And cultural relevancy was a focus. So we had many varieties of peppers, some sweet, some hot. We had herbs like parsley and cilantro. We had okra. We had collard greens. We had a lot of things that could be represented by many different diets and food preferences throughout the pantries and the clients that use them. We had about 300 volunteers contribute approximately 2,300 hours at Forward Garden from beginning of May until the end of November 2020. So a lot of folks learned about it over the course of the season, and we were really, really fortunate to have everyone's help accomplish what we did. So here's a breakdown of the number of pounds of each crop that we had grown in 2020. So Martha was reminiscing about the number of jalapenos she was harvesting last summer when she came out, a couple of 5-gallon pails full. We ended up harvesting 1,400 pounds of jalapenos. And if you look at the bell peppers, the California Wonder is a bell pepper. We did 2,600 pounds of those, but probably took about a quarter of the time that the jalapenos took. Some of these are pretty labor intensive, which is why, it's so important to have volunteer help, like snap peas, for example, or bush beans, many of those, and cilantro. I mean, 82 pounds of cilantro is a lot of cilantro. And as far as I can see, a quick glance, we're planning on planting all of these things again. So what does the future hold for Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens and Forward Garden? We've been working on some site improvements. I'll mention a few of them that are evident here. So we have built a walk-in cooler. We're still working on finishing that. It was fully functioning last summer, but it doesn't look finished yet, as you can see with the Tyvek wrapping. So we're gonna make sure it blends in a little bit better before the end of April, May, so that yeah, we can check it off our list as being a completed structure. This is our volunteer Mark, who is definitely in the top 5 in terms of number of volunteer hours contributed to Forward Garden, and he's real local, lives off Old Sauk Road, is super responsive, has some really useful power tools and some experience using them. So he and I put up some bird netting in the barn so that the barn swallows wouldn't defecate on all of the supplies that we keep in the barn. So that'll be helpful. The second half of the barn's available to the barn swallows. We just didn't want them over the shelving that I'm putting up. Big is the 21 tank. This is actually the second one. You can see a giant dent in it, but the first one had actually a gash, 2 giant holes in the middle of it from transport that just would not have made a very effective water tank. So we sent that one back, got this one, and Arush, he's a Middleton High School. He's a junior this year. He's putting in a 1.5-inch ball valve so that we can feed at least one plot downhill with rainwater that's captured from the roof of the barn. And that was made possible by a grant from the Education Foundation of the Middleton Cross Plains School District. So Arush and Alex Seaborg, Arush Gupta and Alex Seaborg helped write that grant, and we're just wrapping up that project here this month. So we're catching rainwater as we speak, and by the end of planting season, hopefully it'll be full and ready for drip irrigation. This picture in the lower left is Bill Hendricks coming back with the lime buggy from the Middleton Farmers Co-op to help us spread dolomitic lime, which we did a soil analysis in the spring of 2020, and it's fairly low pH on the site, and so we wanted to buffer the pH a bit and get it closer to neutral for our vegetables, and that's what the lime will let us do. So 16 tons were spread on the 6 acres we plan to plant this year. And then this lower right picture is one of our board members, Larry, and his skid steer digging out the rocks on the west side of the hill in preparation for planting, because we're going to expand our 2.4 acres to encompass about 6 acres in production, 5 or 6 acres for this 2021 growing season. And on the right side represents expanded offerings. Honeybee showed up about 10 days ago on site. There's a local guy who lives near St. Thomas. He sells honey at the Fitchburg Farmers Market. His name is Tom Borkhardt, really nice guy. He saw the value of this site for his bees because there's something like 7 different prairies blooming at different times just over the fence north of us at the Conservancy. There's a lot of clover on the west side of the hill where the bees are. And there's going to be a lot of vegetable plants that they will help us pollinate. So it'll be a win-win for everybody with those on. And they're tucked away. So if anyone has a fear of bees, don't worry about coming out. You probably won't get too close to that hive. And I can't see all the other photos because my picture and a couple of photos are in the way. But I think in the top right, I have a photo of Night Hollow Nursery as it currently exists. So all those flats are full of broccoli and cabbage and peppers and lemongrass and all sorts of things that we're going to be planting at our different garden sites. The bottom of the collage here on the right side is a chicken coop. I bought a coop that I want to put 8 birds in and wheel them around because it's on a trailer, and I want to get them out there picking up weed seeds and bugs in areas we're not growing produce on. Obviously, I don't want them risking our food safety. But it's a great place for chickens, and chickens are a great tool for education too when we have youth groups out there. And then I think on the right side, I added a photo of our garlic from last week, and I think it's grown about 1 inch since then. It's really taken off. We planted that last October, and that was actually donated to us from Keene Organics, which is based out of Sun Prairie. they're incredibly generous individuals, and they ship their garlic all over the country. And sometimes those orders fall through, or the window for delivery isn't met, and the garlic is not as high a quality as they'd like it to be, and they make it available to somebody else like us, or a school garden. So I'm hoping we can save some of that and just use it for seed garlic for our own use next fall as well. Okay, so let's see if I can I move this? I can't see the title of my slides, but this shows an effort we made in the off season to get information related to what the clients at different pantry outlets want to see and what format they would like to receive it in. So in years past, we've grown what we know we're able to grow effectively at our different garden sites. And then we work with the pantries so that what we're able to grow and what we have available aligns somewhat with what they think the clients want. But this survey was a direct effort to get feedback from the clients themselves on what they want more of. So we put two produce surveys together. One was a list of fruit, and one was a list of vegetables that we could grow in the future. You know, the fruits, like there were apples, and there's, you know, cherries and plums and peaches and grapes and things that would take several years to establish an orchard of. But this is for long-term planning purposes, because we would love to find a permanent home that we could actually invest in growing some more perennial crops, because we've limited ourselves, with the exception of one garden site, to annual vegetables. It was a collaborative effort. This survey was. We had dietetics interns from the UW helping us with data entry, and the Spanish version here was informed by a woman representing Beth Israel Synagogue, and UW Health faculty and staff were involved in the design of this as well, including our board member, Brian Arndt. He was integral to all of it. And after all the effort, we were able to get input from about 200 pantry clients from 9 of our different outlets. And those outlets represented, I think they had received something like 67% of what we were able to grow at Forward Garden. So majority of what we could provide to outlets last year informed decisions on what we're going to plant more of in the future. And so some of the results surprised me, and I haven't poured through them ad nauseum yet, but the 10 most popular items based on the 200 responses we got were listed here. Some of them were surprising to me. Everybody wanted onions, tomatoes, and broccoli was really popular, which I was happy to see. Cucumbers were much more popular than I expected, because a few outlets told us not to grow cucumbers because they were always they always went into the compost. They didn't get distributed fast enough. Potatoes, carrots, green beans, corn, hot peppers, and peas, and we are well suited now to plant all these things. We have seed or we have transplant started for all the varieties that you see, plus about 30 other items. And the whole objective is for us to get produce, high quality, nutritious produce, to the outlets that need it in a format that it's desired in, at a quantity that is manageable. So, you know, if we have a lot of okra that we're planting, there are some outlets that have clients at them that would like okra more than some of the other outlets. So identifying where those different things should go and prioritizing who gets what is one of the objectives, or one of the ways I can use some of the results to make sure there's less waste, because that's in everyone's best interest. And the light processing was pretty popular. Those options that we gave them for like spiralized zucchini noodles or steamer bags full of broccoli, beans, cauliflower, those were voted on pretty often. And so begs the question of, you know, what kind of capacity should we pursue to meet the desires of the folks that are experiencing food insecurity in our community? We did some steamable bags, about 800 of them in 2020, with our fall succession of beans and broccoli and cauliflower. That was another great collaborative effort. So Promega is a corporation based in Fitchburg that had their employees work from home, and they have chefs that are used to providing meals for employees that they were not very busy with everyone working from home. And so they took on a lot of our produce and they processed it in their commercial kitchen space. It then went to Festival Foods, which they had like a team building staff event, and they bagged it for us and they put their logo on the bags. And we were able to get, hundreds of steamer bags full of broccoli florets already processed and ready to throw in the microwave for 3 minutes and consume into the pantries. And again, the dietetics interns at UW helped us with some of the processing efforts as well. And then this photo in the center here, that's Alexa Arndt, Dr. Brian Arndt's daughter. She has Down syndrome, and she was in an occupational therapy lesson, and she was putting the sticker bags on that were bilingual bags to tell people from pantries how to prepare what we were providing in the steamer bags. So it was just a really cool thing. There's people of all abilities able to contribute to these kinds of efforts. So based on the responses we got, this is what we're planning on growing at Forward Garden in 2021. And the yellow shows you the new crops. So we have bitter melon, which I've never tried in my life, and I'm not sure if I will. But we were told to grow that because it's a pretty important component of diets of the folks that the Hmong Institute serves. And that's one of our outlets from 2020 that will continue to serve in 2021 and beyond. And the number of families that they have been serving on a weekly basis has grown from about 85 to over 400. And so there's more and more people that they are serving, as the months progress, that will hopefully benefit from some of these new varieties that we're going to be growing, including bitter melon, including eggplant, lemongrass, mustard greens, bok choy, sweet potatoes, and probably zucchini as well. So a lot of those were requested by the Hmong Institute, representing the families that they're serving weekly. We weren't able to translate our survey into Hmong effectively. We had tried, but didn't get that done in time. And so it was more informal feedback from the board members of the Institute that informed some of these decisions. All right, so here's some new collaborations that I want to elaborate on a little bit. So I mentioned Pope Farm Elementary School being our neighbor. Alex Schutz is somebody that you guys might have heard from recently, or if you didn't tune in, I think his talk is also available on the website. He helped me write a grant to the Whole Kids Foundation, which is part of Whole Foods, to try and get support to bring each of their K-4 students out to Forward Garden at least once in May, and then 3 other times in the fall, with the intention of them learning about nutrition, sampling some of the produce that doesn't require any processing, like snap peas or snow peas or green beans or broccoli or cherry tomatoes, those kinds of things. And from my experience as a gardener in California, farmer in California, if a kid has a preconception about a vegetable and says they don't like it, and then they try something straight from the plant at a farm that's fresh and ready and perfectly ripe, it can make a huge impact and be kind of a life-changing experience for them in terms of their perspective of that particular vegetable. And that's what I want to see. So Pope Farm, I'm hoping will bring groups out, and Alex is really, as their science educator, really wants that to happen, and I think it will. We got a letter of support from the principal too, so she's also on board with the idea of their students coming out to Forward Garden soon. Asbury Church has been a financial supporter of all of our gardens for many years, and one of our founders actually was a member of that church. one of their staff is going to bring 2 different youth ministry groups out every other Saturday, starting in on May 15th and going through September. So they're going to come out for 2 hours every other Saturday and help us with harvest or whatever else needs to be done on site. This upper right, the Education Foundation and Site One, that is a collaboration related to that giant water tank I showed you a picture of. So the funding for that water tank and some of the supplies for a drip irrigation system were made possible by the Education Foundation. And then Site One, there's a guy, an irrigation specialist from there that's been super helpful. His name is Carl Dowse. And if you ever have an irrigation question, he could answer it. And he's working with his own vendors to try to get some of the supplies donated and reduce costs so that we can stay within budget for what we want to accomplish. And the whole objective for that is to make sure we have access to water if we have too much time in between rain events when the plants are young in May. And then in the bottom here, this collaboration between Little John's and Collaboration for Good is really exciting. Again, Dave Hyde is the chef at Little John's. He's won several awards. He owns Liliana's restaurant, but this Little John's is a nonprofit spinoff of his interest in making food accessible to everyone, regardless of means. And it's a commissary kitchen where they're going to train veterans in culinary arts and food preparation. And he wants to take food that would be wasted and make it, restaurant quality for food pantries and other outlets that serve folks experiencing nutrition and food insecurity. And to get produce from the food pantry gardens to Little John's and from Little John's to our outlets, the Collaboration for Good is a network of 8 women of color in Madison that can help with the transport. And so we are pursuing grants between these 3 entities to form a formal partnership for the next couple of years. One of the things I'd like for those kids from Pope Farm Elementary to do is to plant some pumpkins and other ornamental gourds that they could then come back in October and harvest, and maybe help me manage throughout the summer with their families between school years, with the intent of them being used for a pumpkin sale in October to support the new PTO of the school, so that they have a pot of money to support students for field trips and other things in the future. And they're just forming. And so this is just an idea I have that I think would be a great use of a little bit of property at Forward Garden. Other collaborations I think worth mentioning is I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment with a number of new inquiries from businesses that want to bring staff out. Some of them, can be paid for their time out there from their employer, which is fantastic. Examples are Cummins and Stoughton, Epic. They have this group called Friends at Food Pantry Gardens, and they started coming out in July of last year to Forward Garden every other Saturday for 3 hours. And I had to cap it at 25 because there's so many Epic employees that are young and very active and sit behind a computer working remotely from home all day long or all week long. And they really wanted to get out. And so they would have overwhelmed me at Forward Garden had we allowed more than 25 to show up. So it was great having them out there, especially during harvest season, because the numbers you saw in terms of pounds harvested were in large part because of those groups of 25 every other Saturday from July through September. InfoSec is a new one. I know nothing about that organization except that somebody's going to bring 8 to 10 co-workers with her out to Forward Garden soon on a Wednesday morning, which is perfect. Meat and Hunt is right next to Costco. They're also going to be actively involved, bringing groups out on Thursday evenings. And then Spring Window Fashions those Graber window coverings. They're also interested in getting involved too, which is really exciting. And then this lower left, Cook It Forward, Heights Unlimited, Bethel, Lutheran, those are just the new outlets that we have identified so far for 2021 that we haven't served before. And then pretty exciting for me is the fact that we have the potential of hiring up to 3 interns to support the operation at Forward Garden in 2021. One of them is the Woody Schulte intern that our board helped establish and raise money to support. It's a full-time position that would start whenever the right candidate is available to start, and it would go through most of the summer. I'll start interviewing actually next Friday and Saturday. And the deadline to apply is actually April 15th. So if anybody on this call knows of somebody that doesn't have a summer job yet, that is a hard worker and would love to work with me at Forward Garden, please contact me and I can send you the announcements. You can have them apply if you're interested, or if they're interested. And then the other 2 interns are actually through AmeriCorps Vista. They're summer associates. Technically, they're federal employees for 10 weeks starting in June and going through August. And we are a project station for the summer associate program that Hunger Free America is partnering with AmeriCorps on. So we would just provide the venue for up to 2 interns to spend about 35 hours a week at. So we need to advertise for that position as well. They get a stipend, like a living stipend, as well as an educational stipend at the end of their 10 weeks. Okay. Yeah, this is just a list of general operations and things that we are pursuing so that we can kind of enhance the volunteer experience and increase the quality of and the duration of time we have things available from Forward Garden. I also was able to get a flame weeder, which is this pretty cool tool that I will use only after rain events. So I don't burn the place down. It actually is like propane driven, and there's 5 burners that are focused on the ground that you wheel, and it ends up killing any cotyledons of weeds within a 3-foot swath. So all our vegetable rows are 3 feet apart. And so it should be, it should help me reduce weed pressure significantly. And hand weeding was a really big source of time spent last summer. We got a new seeder as well. We got a 3-in-1 soil conditioner that we picked up last week, actually, that'll help us create a nice planting bed for direct seeded crops like beets and carrots. We had 1 pop-up shade canopy donated. I'm planning on picking up at least 1 more, so we have a place to stage vegetables as we're harvesting in midsummer when it's 90 degrees outside, and also a place for volunteers to take a break under if necessary. The rainwater collection is a work in progress, and we'll be finishing that by the end of May, so we're ready for the growing season. Frost protection blankets. I mentioned Bethel Lutheran Church as a new outlet for 2021, and an individual that runs their pantry actually donated enough for us to buy frost protection fabric for one of our 27 plots, which is a great start, and it'll increase our growing season by about 3 or 4 weeks, which is significant when you're talking about, we had a lot of loss last fall. We would have had a lot more cauliflower and broccoli and bush beans harvested if we had some frost protection. Okay, this is getting towards the end, and I'm wondering if this is going to work. So cross your fingers. This is actually pulled from our website, and if it doesn't work, you're welcome to go check it out. But one of my objectives today was to make sure everyone feels welcome to come out and join me at Forward Garden this growing season. And this is some footage put together to help with volunteer recruitment. So here, let's see what happens.
Matt, hey, it's Brian. I don't think there's sound for everybody.
Oh, hey, Brian. That's a real bummer if I can't get sound. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
You're all being so polite. I
We
had
can-
no idea you couldn't hear.
Yes,
Yeah, we
Oh.
can hear you.
the
Huh.
pictures are pretty good, even without.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful place. Like I said, it almost speaks for itself.
Is it
Huh.
possible to restart the video?
We could restart it, sure. I'm not sure if that would solve the problem, but right now it's on mute. Um, What I could do, since I'm sharing my screen, I could just go to our website and see if it works from there. Should I try that?
Worth a shot.
Yeah, let's try it. I didn't know Brian was with us. I've mentioned you a few times, Brian. I hope I didn't embarrass you. It's interesting. I can't access some of these because.
And
There we go. Oh.
publicly, you make me proud, man.
Oh, thanks. Where are we? I'm not sure how to. Let's see. Sorry, folks. It is a video that one of our board members, Katie Schmidt, put together. She did a great job, and it's worth checking out if you're interested in, or you're at least considering coming out. And one of our volunteers, Carla Noble, she gave us a glowing endorsement as a volunteer for the experiences she had out there. Let's see, Madison. Yeah, I'm not able to. It's hard to navigate when like other things pop up that you don't want. Let's see.
Matt, we'll try and post it on our website after the.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a 5-minute video, and it's actually there's a Asbury Church has abbreviated it for us to 3.5 minutes. If you'd prefer a smaller version or a shorter version, let me know.
Okay,
They might be willing to share that.
okay.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up. That's just about all I wanted to say. We do have a calendar of events on our website, so all of our garden sites and our events at each garden site are posted there, and they're updated. So if we have rain or it's too muddy after a rain event and we have to cancel an event, that's a good place to check if you plan on coming out, and you're not sure about the site conditions or the weather. Check the calendar first.
Could we take a few questions at this point, Matt?
Absolutely.
There were several questions related to volunteering. Individuals would like to know how they would get involved. If there's a company that would like to set up, a regular volunteer time, how would they do that? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the way it's been happening lately is individuals from the company contact me, and we have a dialogue about it, and we determine kind of what their availability is, what their interests are, and how many folks would be interested in coming out on a consistent basis, what fits within their schedule, and what our needs are at the garden too. I'm hoping I'll have at least one intern with me fairly soon, so there will be 2 of us able to accommodate groups. We also have some great volunteers returning from last year that know the setup and can help with hosting groups as well. So I would welcome any inquiries from individuals, and I have my email address and my phone number there, and I'm happy to spell it out and share my phone number with anybody who wants to hear it.
We also had a question related to high school students who volunteer. Would their time be documented by you or the intern so that they could share that with their school?
Yeah, that happens fairly commonly. I try to log all of the volunteer hours so I can accurately report what the accomplishments were any given week or month or year. That's pretty important for all of our garden sites for the purposes of just general internal tracking as well as grant writing efforts. There's a federal rate that can be assigned to each hour that a volunteer contributes that can be used as like in-kind support. So if there's a matching requirement for funds you're requesting, you can put a dollar value to the time that individuals contribute.
Okay,
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. And I have done so for many students from Edgewood, from Middleton. And I think those are the two high schools that had a requirement for graduation, community service requirement.
excellent. And then there was also a question about composting. If you're providing produce to these sites and they aren't able to distribute all of it, do you help them with composting that produce, or how does that, what happens to that extra produce?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't take it back. I'm not sure where to help, rescue it. If we donate it to them and they have their pantry hours and they are closing and it's not all gone, I'd like for them to contact me so I can help get it to a place where it can be used or turned into a restaurant quality meal by Little John's or something.
Sure.
I also would love to have some compost capabilities at the farm. So, worst case scenario, we just rescue those. Yeah.
Hey, it's Brian. I think some of that we're going to try to get over to Heartland Farm Sanctuary this year for that. That's not human consumption, a bowl. And then also, I believe Little John's may be inheriting an on-site digester at their site for that waste that again isn't value added in other forms. And so, we continue to try to be as sustainable as we can and benefit other community partners with that. It's a great question, though.
There was also a question about perennial crops like asparagus and chives. And you did mention that at some point you'd like to do fruits, which would be perennial. Are there any plans to plant perennial vegetables or herbs?
I mean, I have some asparagus crowns in the cooler right now I'd like to plant, and I think I'll find a fence line where they're tucked out of the way. We're currently operating on an annual lease. And so even asparagus is like a 3-year investment before you really get a yield off of those crowns that you're planting. So we've limited our perennial, efforts to garlic and a couple of strawberry plants, which we will continue to plant. But we're pretty confident based on conversations with the family that this is a place that we will be longer term. And so we're thinking through intentionally how to grow and how to expand our offerings in a way that will serve the outlets that we're trying to serve more effectively. Yeah.
Sounds good. There was a comment about the volunteer video. Apparently that's also on YouTube. So we will put the YouTube link to that video on our friend's website for people that want to view that. And then finally, a question related to volunteer tasks that could be done by elementary age kids, including kindergartners. Maybe you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was a picture of my daughter with a handful of worms. I'd love to get a little worm box out there to feed some veggie scraps to. We'll have a chicken flock. They could help me manage them and socialize them with handling and feeding and collecting eggs. My 5-year-old is a really good weeder. She actually really enjoys weeding. So pulling weeds that are not deeply rooted is possible, and we have kids' gloves on site for them to borrow if they want to. Harvesting, anyone of any age. Well, my 2-year-old goes out there and usually takes a bite of everything he gets his hands on. I guess the trick there is to help him do a jalapeno so he learns not to eat what he picks. But yeah, there's things out there that kids of almost any age could help us harvest. Or weeding is definitely a go-to activity throughout the growing season that I always need help with.
So teachers at different schools could also contact you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, I think that is it in terms of questions. Matt, thank you so much. This was really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to helping you pick peppers or whatever else I can do this summer. Let me check. Looks like we've got one more question. No, I guess not. So thank you, Matt, and everyone who's attending, go to our website to get the links to the volunteer video. Feel free to contact Matt directly if you're interested in volunteering. And I also wanted to put in a plug for the Friends. We do have some in-person programs that are going to be starting. Hopefully, we'll be able to actually meet and do programs at the Conservancy starting in June. And information about those programs will be on our Friends of Pope Farm website. And they're also going to be featured in our upcoming news magazine. And if you're a member of the Friends, you'll get a copy of that magazine. So thank you everyone for attending. And again, thank you, Matt, for all of the information.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Have a good day, everybody.